He walked with confidence, a practiced smile, and eyes attentive to the recognition his presence always evoked, until he spotted, across the ballroom, the woman he couldn't erase from his memory, his ex-wife. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We post every day. Continuing. The ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel gleamed under the golden lights of imported crystal chandeliers. It was the most anticipated charity event of the year in Brighton, gathering the Sussex elite for an evening that promised to raise funds for underprivileged children, but in reality served as a showcase for egos and business deals. Business owners from the port sector, influential politicians and local celebrities circulated among tables decorated with white orchids, each measuring their own prestige by the number of greetings received. Raphael Blackwood adjusted the knot of his Italian tie as he walked through the main ballroom, his custom-tailored tuxedo enhancing his athletic physique, maintained with the help of a personal trainer and expensive supplements. At 42, he commanded one of the largest logistics groups in Sussex, with tentacles extending through the ports of Brighton and Eastbourne. His fortune, estimated in figures that even the traditional coffee farmers of the interior envied, was the result of 2 decades of rampant ambition and strategic relationships. Beside him, Melody Carson, 26, a digital influencer with over 200,000 followers, smiled for the cameras that occasionally turned their way. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves over the designer dress Raphael had personally chosen. She held his arm with the rehearsed intimacy of someone who knew exactly what role to play in that social theater. Between one selfie and another, she whispered compliments to the love of her life for the friends who followed her on social media. Raphael walked with the assurance of someone who had never been contradicted in public. His smile was a sharp weapon, calibrated to disarm competitors and win over business partners. His dark eyes scanned the room with the precision of a predator, identifying important faces, calculating opportunities, measuring the impact of his presence. This was how his world worked, a choreography of power where every gesture had a purpose and every word carried weight. But then, from across the ballroom, something made his chest tighten. Camilla Blackwood, she still used his surname, ironically, was being led to one of the central tables by a man Raphael immediately recognized as Dr. Henry Burton, a retired psychiatrist in his 60s. His grey hair was disheveled, his prominent belly barely disguised by a suit that had clearly seen better days. Henry gestured exaggeratedly as he spoke, constantly interrupting Camilla's attempts to participate in conversations with other guests. Raphael felt something visceral twist in his stomach. How was it possible that this woman, the same one who had once intellectually challenged him, who had built a brilliant career as a psychologist, and who was now the author of a book on emotional reconstruction after toxic relationships, was there with someone like that? Camilla wore a simple navy blue dress that, nonetheless, highlighted her natural elegance. Her brown hair was tied in a low bun, and she had forgone the heavy makeup that dominated the event, opting for a discreet look that, paradoxically, made her stand out even more. At 38, she radiated a serene confidence Raphael remembered admiring, and then trying to stifle, during their 10 years of marriage. Fate's irony had the event organizers seat them at the same table, along with 6 other guests, a couple of hotel industry entrepreneurs, a local journalist and his wife, and 2 single women who had clearly dressed to impress wealthy men. As they approached the table, Melody immediately clung more tightly to Raphael's arm, her feminine instinct detecting the tension emanating from him like heat. She pretended to be distracted by her phone, but her eyes peered over the screen, trying to decipher the dynamic between her boyfriend and the elegant woman who watched him with disconcerting calm. Camilla greeted everyone politely, including Raphael, who responded with a formal nod. Henry, for his part, made a point of announcing to the table that he was reforming his companion, as if she were a personal project. Camilla was very bitter when we met, he said, pulling out her chair without delicacy. Typical of a divorced woman, right? But I'm teaching her to be feminine again, to value the company of a real man. The awkward silence that followed was broken by the arrival of the first course. Raphael watched every interaction between Camilla and Henry as if it were slow torture. The man corrected her posture at the table, made tasteless jokes about therapy and relationships, and even interrupted her when the journalist asked about her book. She wrote all those pages to exercise her ex-husband. Henry chuckled, discreetly pointing to Raphael. Typical of a psychologist, right? Can't solve her own problems, so she writes a book. Camilla took a deep breath but maintained her composure. Actually, the book talks about how to recognize toxic patterns and rebuild self-esteem after destructive relationships. It has helped many people. Oh, darling, Henry rolled his eyes, you need to stop taking everything so seriously. Life is meant to be lived, not analyzed. It was then that the moment Raphael would never forget happened. Edward Miller, editor of the state's leading cultural magazine, approached the table specifically to greet Camilla. Dr. Camilla, what a pleasure to find you here. I must congratulate you again on the success of your book. 5 editions sold out already, isn't that right? And I hear there's interest from a national publisher for countrywide distribution. Camilla's face lit up with a genuine smile. The first of the evening. Thank you, Edward. It's been an incredible journey, receiving so many testimonials from people who identified with the work. And well-deserved, Edward continued. How rarely do we see such a profound and yet accessible analysis of personal reconstruction. You've managed to transform pain into knowledge, and knowledge into a tool for healing for others. Henry, visibly bothered by the attention Camilla was receiving, interrupted the conversation. Yes, she certainly has a knack for dramatizing suffering. Women love to turn anything into a Greek tragedy. The editor frowned, clearly uncomfortable, and excused himself politely. Camilla thanked him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and Raphael felt his hands tremble under the table. The situation deteriorated throughout the night. Henry drank more than he should have, and became progressively more obnoxious. He made inappropriate comments about other women present, questioned Camilla's opinions in public, and even possessively placed his hand on her thigh when she tried to participate in a conversation about public education policies. Raphael observed all this with a mixture of disgust and incomprehension. How could the same woman, who had once confronted him about his controlling behaviors, now be tolerating something even worse? How could someone who had written a book about toxic relationships be living exactly that? The culmination came when Camilla, in response to a question about her work as a psychologist, began to explain a social project she was developing in underprivileged communities. Henry interrupted her mid-sentence. She's my emotional re-education mission now. I'm teaching her not to take life so seriously, to be more spontaneous, more feminine. 2 intellectual women scare men away, right? And then, as if a dam had broken inside him, Raphael could no longer contain himself. The image of that woman, his ex-wife, the mother of his son, someone for whom he still harbored confused and unconfessable feelings, being diminished in that way made him completely lose control. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his wine glass onto the white tablecloth, and shouted with a force that silenced the entire ballroom, "You are not the same person I loved." The silence that followed was deafening. 300 people stopped talking, chewing, breathing. All eyes turned to that table, where one of the most powerful men in the county was undone, trembling with tears of rage in his eyes. Camilla stared at him with a serenity that brutally contrasted with his emotional chaos. Her voice came out low, but firm enough for everyone to hear. "And you are still the same person I needed to leave." Melody immediately stood up, muttering embarrassed apologies before practically running to the lady's room. Henry tried to laugh at the situation, but his laughter sounded forced and out of place. The other guests at the table pretended to study their plates with sudden fascination. Raphael remained standing for a few more seconds, as if trying to process what had just happened. Then, without an additional word, he turned and left the ballroom with hurried steps, leaving behind not only his embarrassed companion, but also any remnant of the carefully constructed image of a man in control of all situations. On the hotel sidewalk, he called his private driver, but then cancelled the call. He hailed a regular taxi, as if he wanted to hide even from himself. During the ride to his penthouse in the Marina district, Raphael looked out the window at the city lights he had helped shape financially, but which now seemed strange and indifferent to his suffering. Arriving home, he dismissed the housekeeper and locked himself in his office. There, surrounded by the trophies of his career and photos of Gabriel, his 12-year-old son, Raphael Blackwood, the man who had never been defeated in a negotiation, finally admitted to himself that he had lost the most important battle of his life. In the days that followed the incident at the Rosewood Hotel, Raphael Blackwood found himself in a spiral of self-analysis he had never imagined possible. Melody had ended the relationship via a WhatsApp audio message, claiming she couldn't be with someone emotionally unstable. The influencer's social media already displayed photos with a new suitor, a local football player. Raphael didn't even feel anger. There were more important things occupying his mind. Locked in his penthouse for 3 consecutive days, he did something that hadn't happened in years. He watched Camilla's interviews. There were several available on YouTube, from her participation in psychology podcasts to a long conversation on a morning show where she talked about the book. It was in one of these interviews that Raphael discovered, almost by chance, that Gabriel was in therapy. "My son has a special sensitivity," Camilla explained to the host. "He's a very analytical, brilliant child, but he feels emotions with an intensity that sometimes frightens him. Therapy has been fundamental for him to learn to deal with his own feelings." Raphael paused the video. Gabriel was in therapy. His son needed professional help to deal with emotions, and he knew nothing about it. Worse, he was probably part of the problem that led the boy there. On Thursday, he made a decision that would have seemed unthinkable a week prior. He called Dr. Marianne Sterling, Gabriel's therapist, and requested a consultation, not for his son, for himself. The psychologist's office was located in a discreet building in downtown Brighton, very different from the luxurious environments Raphael usually frequented. The waiting room had scientific journals instead of business and economics publications. When he was called in, Raphael found himself before a middle-aged woman, grey hair tied in a simple ponytail, who observed him without any trace of deference or intimidation. "You came to me to talk about Gabriel," she said, after he settled into the floral fabric armchair. "But I have the impression that you also need to talk about yourself." Raphael tried to maintain his business composure, but something in the therapist's calm voice disarmed him. "I want to understand why my son needs therapy. If I did something wrong, if I can fix it." "Gabriel is an extraordinary child," Dr. Marianne gently interrupted him. "He has a very developed emotional intelligence for his age. He can perceive nuances in relationships that most adults ignore. But this sensitivity also makes him suffer more when he feels that the people he loves are suffering, and he suffers because of me." The question came out more vulnerable than Raphael intended. The therapist studied him for a moment before answering. "Gabriel doesn't feel anger towards his father. He misses him. A deep longing, which he describes as a hole in his chest when I think about Daddy. He told me he sometimes stays awake at night imagining conversations with you, planning things you could do together." Raphael felt his eyes sting. I didn't know." "Have you ever wondered why you didn't know?" The question echoed in Raphael's mind all the way back home. That same afternoon, he did something he had neglected for months. He took the car and went to pick Gabriel up from school, at the exact dismissal time. The boy was sitting on the bench in front of the gate, alone, fiddling with something that looked like a Rubik's Cube. When he saw his father approaching, his eyes lit up with such pure joy that Raphael felt his chest tighten. "Daddy, you came to pick me up." "Yes, I did. Sorry it took me so long to do this." In the car, Gabriel talked about school, about his friends, about a science project he was developing. Raphael truly listened to him, not just pretending to pay attention while thinking about work calls. He discovered that his son had inherited his knack for mathematics, but also had an insatiable curiosity about how things worked. "Daddy, did you know there are infinite numbers between 1 and 2? Gabriel asked, manipulating the cube with agile fingers. "I didn't. They explain it to me." And Gabriel explained, with the patience of a teacher and the excitement of a child who had finally found someone interested in his discoveries. Raphael realized that he didn't know his own son. He knew the boy got good grades and liked to read, but he was completely unaware of the rich and complex universe that inhabited Gabriel's mind. They started meeting every day. Raphael changed his routine to be at school promptly at 5:30 in the afternoon. He didn't make promises, didn't make speeches about change. He simply showed up. On the first day, Gabriel seemed surprised. On the second, expectant. From the third day on, he was already waiting with a pile of napkins on which he wrote math problems for them to challenge each other during their snack at the corner bakery. "This one's easy, Daddy," Gabriel would say, handing him a napkin with equations scribbled in pencil. "But this one will make you think." Raphael discovered that solving problems with his son was more gratifying than closing any multi-million-dollar deal. He saw the genuine pleasure in Gabriel's eyes when he arrived at the correct answer, and noticed how the boy calmed down with the predictability of those daily encounters. 2 weeks later, Camilla called. Her voice sounded different, less defensive. "Gabriel told me you two are meeting every day." "We are. He's amazing, Camilla. I didn't know." "I know you didn't know." There was a pause. "I'm thinking of proposing something. Gabriel wants to sleep at your house this weekend. If you agree, you can have him from Saturday morning until Sunday night." Raphael almost dropped the phone. "Seriously? You'd let him?" "It's not about reconciliation, Raphael. It's about our son. He needs his father. And maybe you've learned to be a real father." On Saturday morning, when Gabriel arrived with a small backpack and a huge smile, Raphael felt he was being tested, not by Camilla, but by life. They improvised scientific experiments in the kitchen, watched documentaries about the universe, made pizza from scratch, and for the first time in 12 years, Raphael read a story to his son before bed. Gabriel fell asleep beside him during the reading of The Little Prince, and Raphael stayed awake for hours, observing the boy's serene face. For the first time, he understood what unconditional love meant. On Sunday morning, as they prepared pancakes together, Gabriel casually commented, "Daddy, you're different now. Before, you always seemed rushed, like you had to be somewhere else. Now you seem like you want to be here with me." "That's because I want to be here with you, Gabriel, more than anywhere else in the world." When he took his son back to Camilla, she greeted him at the door with an unreadable expression. Gabriel ran inside to tell his mother about the weekend, and the two ex-spouses were left alone for a few minutes. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For not making promises you can't keep. For simply showing up." Raphael nodded. "I don't want to promise anything anymore. I just want to be consistent." The following months brought a transformation no one expected, especially Raphael. He began to decline invitations to social events, delegated more responsibilities at the company to competent employees, and discovered that the business world continued to spin even when he wasn't personally controlling every detail. He deleted ostentatious posts from social media, ended partnerships with influencers that only served to inflate his ego, and began to invest in genuine social projects, not just for tax benefits. His new routine included picking Gabriel up from school, helping him with homework, and attending parent-teacher meetings with a genuine presence that impressed the teachers. "Your father is more present," the math teacher commented to Camilla during one of these meetings. "Gabriel talks about him constantly, shows the problems they solve together. It's beautiful to see." Camilla observed these changes with a mixture of hope and skepticism. She had tried to protect her heart against expectations, but it was impossible to ignore the transformation she saw not only in Raphael, but especially in Gabriel. The boy was more confident, more talkative, less anxious. It was on an October afternoon that everything changed again. Camilla had taken Gabriel to his weekly meeting with his father when Dr. Marianne asked to speak with her privately. "I received a note today," the therapist said, showing a folded piece of paper. "Gabriel wrote it during our session." Camilla unfolded the paper and read Kang with tears in her eyes. "My dad is good at solving math problems, but now he's also good at understanding people, especially at understanding that I need him the way he is now, not the way he was before." Henry had gradually disappeared from Camilla's life, without drama or explanations. She didn't miss him. In fact, she had barely noticed his absence, so absorbed was she in observing the relationship between Raphael and Gabriel rebuild. It was on a Friday, when Gabriel was at his father's house for another weekend, that Camilla made an impulsive decision. She called Raphael. "Can I drop by to pick up some books Gabriel forgot?" "Of course. We were doing a 1,000-piece puzzle. Would you like to stay for coffee?" Camilla hesitated. "Just a few minutes." When she arrived at the apartment, she found Raphael and Gabriel on the living room floor, surrounded by puzzle pieces, laughing at some inside joke. The scene was so different from the memories she had of their married life that she felt as if she were observing strangers. "Mommy!" Gabriel jumped up to hug her. "Come see. Daddy figured out how to do the edges first, but I figured out how to do the middle designs." She sat on the floor with them, and Raphael went to make coffee. For the next 20 minutes, the three of them worked together on the puzzle. A Van Gogh image that slowly took shape. There was a lightness in the atmosphere that Camilla hadn't felt in years. When Gabriel went to the bathroom, she and Raphael were alone for the first time in months. The silence was not uncomfortable. "You're different," she finally said. "I'm trying to be who I should have been from the beginning." "And who is that person?" Raphael looked at the pieces scattered on the floor, at the photos of Gabriel on the shelf, at the woman who had once been his wife and who was now something indefinable, but important. "Here's someone who understands that love isn't about possession or control. It's about presence. It's about showing up when you're needed and knowing when to step back. It's about making the other person feel free to be who they truly are." Camilla felt something stir in her chest, something she had buried so deep she thought it was dead. "Raphael, I'm not asking for a second chance," he interrupted her gently. "Not yet. Maybe never. I just want you to know that I finally understood why you left, and that if one day you decide it's worth trying again, I'll be here. Not as the man you left, but as the man our son is teaching me to be." Gabriel came running back into the room, breaking the moment, but not the emotional tension that lingered in the air. Camilla helped finish another section of the puzzle before saying goodbye. At the door, she turned to Raphael one last time. "I don't want promises," she said, echoing the words she had spoken months earlier. "I want consistency. And you'll have it. You can count on me." In the months that followed, they developed a new dynamic. They weren't a couple, but they also weren't just divorced parents fulfilling legal obligations. They were two mature people who had learned to put their son's well-being above personal grievances. They started having dinner together on Fridays, always at home, always the three of them. Camilla began to stay longer during visits, participating in the activities Raphael and Gabriel were doing. There were moments of closeness, hands brushing as they reached for the same object, glances lingering longer than necessary, but neither of them forced anything. It was Gabriel who precipitated the definitive conversation. "Why don't you get married again?" he asked on one of those Fridays. As the three of them watched a movie in the living room, Camilla and Raphael exchanged glances over the boy's head. "It's complicated, honey," Camilla replied, "but you like each other. I see it, and you like me, and we have fun together. Isn't that what a family does?" Raphael felt his heart race. "Gabriel, sometimes adults need time to understand their own feelings." "How much time?" The boy's direct and innocent question echoed in the room. Camilla looked at Raphael and saw for the first time in years, not the arrogant man who had controlled her life, but someone vulnerable, genuine, who was afraid of messing up the second chance life was offering. "I don't know," she answered honestly, "but I promise that when we know, you'll be the first to know." Gabriel smiled, satisfied with the answer, and returned his attention to the movie. But Camilla and Raphael continued to look at each other, a silent conversation unfolding between them. That night, after Gabriel fell asleep, they stayed in the kitchen, drinking wine and talking about everything and nothing. It was almost midnight when Camilla got up to leave. "Camilla," Raphael said when she was already at the door, "I love you, not in the way I loved you before, which was possessive and insecure, but in a new way, one that wants to see you happy even if it's not with me." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I love you too," she said softly, "and maybe that's exactly why we need to be sure that this time it will work." "And how will we know?" She finally turned, and Raphael saw tears in her eyes. "When I can look at you and not see the man who hurt me, but only the man you chose to become." "And when will that be?" Camilla smiled through her tears. "I think it's already happening." And for the first time in 3 years, she approached him and kissed him. Not a kiss of unrestrained passion, but something deeper, a promise that mature love, built on solid foundations of respect and personal growth, was possible between two people willing to evolve. When they parted, Raphael rested his forehead against hers. "This time we'll do things differently. This time we'll do things right. And in the silent apartment, as Gabriel slept peacefully in his room, Raphael Blackwood and Camilla restarted their love story. Not as the powerful businessman and the submissive wife they had been in the past, but as two adults who had learned that true love is not about completing each other, but about creating a safe space where both can grow and flourish together.